so this will be the final part on the Labby tutorial. So we are going to get started. Hopefully there won't be too much to do. I say that now, knowing that I can faff. But yeah, let's get started. I haven't worked on this in quite a bit. So I'm probably going to start... I'll start somewhere comfortable and easy and nice. Yeah, so let's get cracking. Just remember, for these final details, we'll be following very similar steps to what we have in the previous videos, so there won't really be anything new. So mostly I'll let you know what pencils I use, but I think majority of these steps will be self-explanatory, especially if you've been through all previous 6 parts. So it's a very, I've explained this enough that it's very similar across all layers, kind of my methods. So we will be keeping to that way of building up our layers, even with the details, because details is just another layer of pencil. So we will continue on with that. So yeah, so my first instinct was to pick up a 2B pencil, see how long I'll keep with this one. But first, this is gonna seem odd, but this is kind of just something I want to do. So I'm gonna take my big flat brush, add powder to it, tap off the excess, and I'm just gonna go in over the entire drawing, and I'll probably do this once or twice, 2 or 3 times maybe even. And I don't know, sometimes I just get... Alright, so 2B pencil, I just took a moment because I needed to lift the camera up because it was kind of in my way. So that's why a pencil just magically appeared. So 2B pencil, let me just see. Alright. So I'm going to go around with this pencil and just kind of dip my toes back into it. I generally do this when I haven't worked on something in a while. Is I take a pencil that's not going to be very dramatic in depth or whatever, but just so that I can ease my way back into a portrait, because I do sometimes, it almost feels like you're starting it again. You need to just reacquaint yourself. So that's just what I'm doing, and it also gives me a chance to kind of get a closer look at the portrait and also formulate a plan forward. Kind of assess the situation. I'm just also taking this 2B pencil now, and we're going to go into these areas where you kind of have the fur going over the collar, and just slowly starting to add that in, kind of just doing my own thing, not really, but somewhat paying attention to the reference, but also not really, because I've already established what everything is, where it's supposed to go, so it shouldn't be not that difficult for me to kind of figure out what the next kind of level of value should be. There you go. I'm going to be moving my drawing around a lot. It just makes it easier to get the direction of the fur correct. And that just stops you from having kind of stiff application, because you don't have to angle your hand around a lot. Even taking this 2B pencil in these areas around the ears. These kind of fluffies are actually captured by the light, but since we're working in purely grayscale, you kind of have to take some liberties in making them visible in your version of the drawing. Right. And all of this is not going to be detailed out, so I'm not that worried about these areas. So I think now we need to start doing things to this area down here. So I'm just taking my mono eraser, giving it a bit of a sharpen. And now just, you're trying to now in these layers be a bit more accurate with your applications, and also show uniformity in direction, but in these end bits just have a little bit more variation. And you can do that by changing direction, or in certain cases you add a bit more pressure and it takes away more of the pencil underneath, or you can soften up the pressure and it will just lightly add some highlights. So just like the pencils, you can kind of create interest by varying the pressure of your mono eraser. Sorry, my brain's a bit slow today. A bit hard to formulate thoughts. Coherent thoughts, really. And if I were to leave it just like that, that's kind of the harshness I was speaking about. That was kind of bothering me when I started out the drawing. I just needed to take away some of that. And kind of that balance between harshness and too subtle, or I won't say subtle, but yeah, subtle is probably the right word. It's a very delicate balance, finding that middle ground where it looks just right, where you've got that balance in your exposure and your darks and your lights and your midtones, and everything doesn't look just washed out or too stark or harsh. So in areas like this where it takes away a lot, I'll just go over with a blending stump, not adding any powder to it. And it will just mute it back down again. Because even these areas of shadows requires some subtle differences in value. I'm just going to take my 2B pencil and break up. And the reason my 2B pencil is still working in this area is because majority of this layers is powder and not really heavy pencils. Because once you start adding those B range pencils in a heavy layer, they kind of lose that ability. It becomes, especially with the Cretacolors, it becomes very silky, smooth and soft, and it becomes very difficult to do anything over top of it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I also build up to those values, is because once they're in, even the erasers glide over it, so it's not the easiest to remove. It's a pain actually. So I'd rather just take my time building up to that value. And just taking my big brush, going over that areas. So it just mutes it, but it's still very visible what you added. Now this is my 8B pencil. And similar to everything that we have done, we will do with this pencil. Just let the pencil do the work for you. It has a nice sharp point, so it will kind of be a bit more concentrated and have depth. Sorry about that. The lighting is a bit horrendous, so We're even going to take the 8B in this highlighted area. You're not going to pull through continuous same length kind of strokes. That's just not going to look real. So you want to vary your pressure as well, and that will just add some less uniformity. We don't want uniformity. Sometimes you do, and then it aids. I think uniformity especially is more applicable in your initial layers, and then once you start adding more, you kind of want to vary things up a bit, because nothing in real life is really perfect or uniform across the board. So even with fur, there is some subtle differences that you want to be able to convey and bring across in your drawing. So yes, we are detail orientated, we are doing realism, but we've also got to kind of embrace the the fact that it's not really perfect. Gotta embrace some imperfections, really. A little better. Slowly but surely we are getting there. I'm just going to take a blending stump. Very much a rinse and repeat whole process, really. Razor. I'm just going to clean it up. So we've already done the work at the top on the forehead. It's basically just this area and the muzzle that needs to be... I'm even satisfied kind of with this area. It's more like this bottom half that still needs some finessing. And certain areas you do have to kind of accept that they are going to take a little bit more time to build up the correct look and feel. It's not... It might be you are definitely employing the same techniques, but certain areas just require more layers, just lots of back and forth between your tools and different grades of pencils. So I think I'm gonna move on to I need to work on these links some more. I'm gonna scooch you in just ever so slightly. Just the purpose of this now is just to add some building up the values. Even though it's quite a small area, this is my F pencil, by the way. Although this is a small kind of part of the drawing. Sorry, just there's still some differences in the values that you can show. Obviously, if you had a larger area, you'd be able to add a lot more, but you have to just work with what you got. And we'll just kind of slightly just take the F pencil around the areas of the collar. This is my larger mono eraser. It's a lot easier to use this one, especially when you want to take away a bit more. So it just makes it a lot easier, and because it's a larger one, you also don't always need to add that much pressure. Just taking my F pencil, and I will clean up around where I've taken away. Just because I tend to take away a larger area that is needed, and then I just clean up with a pencil. So that just makes it a lot easier. Scooch you in so that you can see. And then I'm just going to go and do that all around. will be switching between my mono eraser and my F pencil. Just the reason I don't want to go in with anything darker just yet, because we are still building up some of these values, and you actually don't need anything darker at the moment. And the F pencil also makes it a lot easier to define the edges, because it keeps its point a lot longer. If you do erase, just make sure that when you do go in to refine the edges, that you are keeping true to the shape. And not just making it thinner, or you actually adding some shape to it. Oopsie daisy. And these highlights that I'm adding, I'll I'll definitely reinforce them at the end as well, once I've now decided that the drawing is complete, because just as you continuously add powder, it obviously kind of mutes down all your highlights. So I just continuously will kind of add them, reinforce them. It's just also good practice to do. happier with the way these metal links are looking. Now I'm just gonna take, see. Just gonna take my 8B, go around it, still make sure it's sharp. Just go around and define the edges. In particular, the shadows, where the links kind of move into one another. And this will also help define the edges. So I'm just going in with my 8B and defining some of the edges, as well as doing some stuff to the outside. Thinking part of my brain is really not working. Taking the F pencil, and I'm just gonna clean up some of the links, or the inside of the links. I'll probably faff around with it more during the end as well. No. This is my F pencil, and I'm just gonna go around certain areas. actually gonna take blending stump, some powder on it, tap off the excess, I'm just gonna go in this area of the shoulder. Also go around to this side as well. I'm just going to take a brush with some powder on it, tap off the excess, well, obviously I didn't tap off all the excess, but that's fine, I actually don't mind. Just gonna go over this whole area. And you're gonna even everything out. Just gonna take my kneaded eraser, go quite a bit from the edge first and clean up. Then I just lightly almost sweep as I get closer, and then I'll take the brush nothing on and just diffuse the line or lines that it left. Now I'm gonna take my 8B. Let's see if we're still in focus. I think we should be. Here. Actually going to give it a bit of a sharpen first. Just going to work in this area underneath the muzzle. And also go into the top lip as well. And I'm just gonna also take this 8B. I'm gonna do what I did kind of in the previous layers. And take it over all over the drawing. I'll just sharpen it. And I am also gonna keep, yes, a B pencil close by, just for something with a little less, something that's a little less potent. And I'm gonna go over the entire drawing and work my way back to the bottom. This is kind of what I do just to give myself some reprieve from areas that are still in progress. So this is my B pencil first. Just in the lighter areas. these are areas that we have worked on extensively, so we're just finessing. We're just continuously building and finessing and adding depth. So this is my 8B pencil. I mean, obviously one can continue kind of working on it for a lot longer than one needs to. But you need to know when will be your kind of final applications. B pencil, so I'm just going to switch in between these two. And obviously this will depend solely on also what you have done with your drawing. Because obviously I'm telling you what I do to get to the end result. But obviously yours will not look like mine or always be in the same state of progress as mine. So this is where I'm going to switch in between these two depending on the depth of the area, or depending on the depth of the area. So you're going to have to start using kind of your judgment on how much of this do you want to show up, basically. I'm just gonna scoot you in. Let me just see. Just focus this up again. So right now when I'm looking at the reference, I'm zoomed out all the way. So I'm more using, I know what the details look like. I'm now trying to look at the whole picture and get myself to see where's my drawing in comparison to the reference. Obviously I tend to go darker in general, so this is just to evaluate where I am at and it's almost like looking at the bigger picture without the details. Yes, we are in the detail stage, but you obviously need to add the details in places where it's required, that when you step back it will make sense with the rest of the drawing and actually look like it belongs, because you obviously don't want it to stand out unnecessarily. And stand out in a bad way. Definitely do not want that. Definitely do not want that at all. Still with my 8B. Still sharp enough. I mean, not really applying a lot of pressure, and this is the Faber-Castell 8B, so it doesn't lose. It's a lot harder of a pencil than the Cretacolor, the Mars Lumograph. And that's why I like the Faber-Castell's B range, is you don't wear it out as quickly. Right, so this is a new day for me, but I did check where I ended last, so we'll continue on using the 8B and the B pencil over the whole portrait. Let me just see. Okay, so I'm going to take my 8B pencil and start from this side. I'm still kind of figuring out the lighting in this area because it's a bit, because of the color, it looks a bit, I can change it into a grayscale and, I can change it into grayscale and see then. But it's obviously not gonna help me. Sometimes you kind of need to figure it out yourself. Play around with it. I mean, you can easily take away and add with this method of layering. So you can easily play around with areas that you're not quite sure what the values should look like, and you can obviously you will be able to tell whether or not you've gotten it right or not. I'm just going to shift to a B pencil for this area. And obviously there's still some work that needs to be done with the mono eraser as well in this area, especially here. So it's still looking a bit flat compared to the rest of the drawing. As I'm moving my way towards the nose, the length of the hairs gets shorter, so we also have to make our marks with the pencils shorter as well. And I'm just going to take the B pencil for the little flyaways. I'm just going to take my mono eraser since we are busy. Busy daisy. I'm just gonna spend a little time figuring this out. So very similar to what we did down here in the neck, you kind of have to vary your pressure with the mono eraser as well, and also break it up so that you don't have like a straight line or curve of kind of highlight, so to speak. It needs to look a bit more organic and not so stiff. So just vary it, change it up. It's looking slightly better. Okay, just gonna, not with anything, just very lightly, just sweep over it. 8B pencil. Okay, so I'm just gonna move my way down to this area. Gonna start in technically the shadows. we're going to just go into this area. Still using very light pressure on the 8B. I'm letting the pencil's depth do most of the work. If you're hearing any noises, it's just the cats playing. So if you do hear some, it shouldn't actually pick it up that much. But if you do, it's just cats being cats. So obviously what I'm also trying to do with this B, mostly with the 8B, is when you concentrate your marks, you're gonna naturally add depth without actually adding a full layer. So in areas that's also just a slight different value, that's kind of how you can show. So you can, sorry, so you can also change up the depth and show a darker area by adding just a few darker marks into certain spaces. And the same goes if you were going to use an eraser. Just a collection of kind of a cluster of highlights can make an area look lighter without you actually having to have less layers than an area next to it. So that's why I also kind of use that layering method where everything looks kind of flat. That I can also use the details to build up the values and show those little changes in values by having those clusters of darker applications and obviously lighter applications or eraser marks. So it's not always you actually having to create that area being lighter. You can absolutely show, and I think that's how you build that depth, that look of a drawing having substance, that there's structures underneath your details, is by technically going darker in those initial layers and then building and taking away in the top ones, and that just shows depth, that it gives it more of a foundation. Your details sit on top of something and it's not just a detail layer, it's not just one thing. You didn't just go in with one application and then decide, you know, that's that. I'm now going to take my B pencil around the nose, and you can absolutely, you don't have to use a B pencil in your lighter areas. For areas like this, I would absolutely, if you are maybe afraid that you're going to make it a lot darker than you need to, you can absolutely go in with an F pencil, or even, I would say for these layers, an F pencil would probably be your best bet. I highly doubt a 2H would make much of a noticeable difference, but you can absolutely use a 2F an F pencil as well, which I would probably do in the nose itself, but I'm gonna make myself stay to the fur, and not go into the nose, and then we can go back to the nose with an F pencil. But in these lighter areas, even in the rest of the actual fur, if you don't want to have the B pencil be your bottom range pencil, you can absolutely use an HB or an F. If you've got an H, you can even use an H. Just something that you will still be able to see the marks you make. So you do want to be able to see a difference. I'm just using very light pressure with most of these pencils anyway. And if you do have a natural tendency to be a bit more heavy-handed, just go to, I would say 2 is your best bet down in the range. I'm just gonna go over the brush lightly, almost like you're sweeping away stuff, but you're not. Okie dokie. This is my 8B pencil. I'm gonna go with a bit more of a medium-ish pressure just for these little whisker indents. And those are absolutely the type of details that I tend to leave till last, because it's not necessary to add them in earlier. Obviously in areas where it is darker, you absolutely have to use more pressure, especially if you already have a few layers already down. So here I'm just using a little bit more pressure just to add more depth. And this is just to start showing just layers of depth, different layers of the animal, whether or not it's kind of have levels to it. And just as you add the shadow, just pull it into the top level as well, just to show that there's a structure that's coming over it and that it doesn't have like a stiff straight line. There you go. So there's just adding more, something a bit more. So here for this I am going to take actually an F pencil, just because the tip of the fur that goes over is darker than it's got this highlight ridge right here, so I just want to fill in the gaps with the F pencil, just to get rid of those lighter areas in the shade, but still have them lighter than our darkest marks that we've made, and do the same here at the bottom. Because it is, you can see the difference between what's the bottom layer and what goes over top. I'm gonna take my smaller mono eraser. And just kind of add in those highlights. That is that middle kind of curve. And that will kind of just bring home kind of that look and feel. And if I do start adding the whiskers, I just clean it up with an F pencil or 2H or an H or whatever. Something that's not going to really be visible, but in those highlighted sections, it's going to just take away, kind of shrink it to a better size. Back in with my little mono eraser. And these are absolutely, I think I've mentioned this before, you have to take your time with these very intricate changes in direction for your fur and the different levels to the fur, just to get it correct. There's no point in rushing. Nothing rushes you, really. Especially when you're doing artworks for yourself, for your progress. No need to rush it. So you can see how I easily just removed that kind of whiskers. Back in with my 8B pencil. Just building up the depth in these areas. Going in between the links as well. This is a darker area, but just as you do this, do take in mind the direction of which the fur does go in this area. Just scooting around. So for if I take away fur marks like this, I just take my F pencil, same as what we did with the whiskers, and just instead of using the brush, because sometimes I don't want to lose the crispness of what I've just erased, I'll just take the F pencil and kind of use that as the brush, just to take away that really stark highlights, slim it down as such. B pencil, and just go into this area of highlight as well, just to break it up, that it's not, doesn't look like one big chunk of fur, which it's not, so you don't want it to look as such either. And the same goes for areas here. It's now coming to that point where you kind of start breaking it up. 8B pencil, just to add some difference. Same with kind of the shade areas, the darker areas. Vary your pressure, and that just also gives some difference to your areas of depth. B pencil. Back with 8B. And take my small little mono eraser again. Actually, before I do that, just want to add more depth. Just there you go. Mono eraser. Not going over the entire area, just certain places. Just to break it up. and just sweep. There you go. Right, so now I'm gonna do just some bit of work on the collar, then move along to the edge of the drawing. So I'm just gonna take my B pencil and very light pressure first. Just gonna define that bottom edge first, as well as through these little plastic pieces. Just adding some kind of little lines, so to speak. Everything on that side is more out of focus. We'll go in afterwards with the mono eraser just to add in those highlights. So that's just those texture marks. The ones in front are a bit more visible. So I'm adding in the vertical and the horizontal lines, using softer pressure obviously for the ones going horizontally, because they're actually just more visible here in the front than in the back. I'm going to clean up my mono eraser. While it's still clean, I'm going to add in the stitching first. And then just here at the back as well. Now little plastic pieces, add in the highlights as well. And then here, I'm gonna go kind of more the horizontal little lines first. And then I'm going to add a very more definite highlights at the edge. And then add the little, same as you did with the pencil, just vertical little marks. And that I would call that color done, because it's really, it's not the most important part of the drawing. The lengths, on the other hand, it's a much more there in your face part because it's actually integrated with the fur. So F pencil and mono eraser first. I'm gonna clean it up. Also, I just see that it's a bit highlighted down here at the bottom as well. And then just adding like a little line there at the top. So I'm cleaning up my highlights of the links first. And then I'm just going to take my F pencil and put back in the fur that goes over the top of those highlights. And this is probably going to take some finessing. Obviously not going to be perfect the first time. You can use other pencils. Just also varying the direction of the fur. There we go. And this is kind of a strange balance because the fur's also got some elements that are highlighted, so it's you have to kind of take your time to layer it up. And this is kind of where I use a mixture of darker fur marks and highlighted and those in between, just to switch it up because we can't use color. It's all about the values. So you do sometimes need to have a mixture of those three, even though you know it's actually maybe a mid-tone or a lighter value. Just because sometimes it's a very small area that has a lot of varying shades of grey. So you just need to use everything in your toolbox. And just remember the metal has the main highlight, which you see, and then sometimes at the bottom where it also catches the light, there will also be a highlight. It's a lot easier to do when the metal that you're drawing is a much larger scale. But this is still large enough where you can add in those little subtle details still. So definitely don't neglect those where you can put them in. The same goes for the shadows. And this will just give some interest, it will make it more interesting to view and not flat and just a collection of the same pattern of highlight and shadow, because it's not, but we have to work with the size that we've got. This is my B pencil. And I am picking a very noticeable shadow. So underneath this second link, there is this little piece where the fur gets tucked underneath the link and makes this nice little interesting shadow. So I'm picking that spot as kind of my marker that I work and spread out from. And this just breaks up the fur into manageable pieces because I've completely removed all my grids in this area. So I'm just creating my own landmarks, so to speak. And this is still an area where I won't like fade it out. This ridge here with the collar is the same. And in this spot I'm using quite a hard pressure. Mono eraser, and it doesn't have to be that first application with the pencils. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to map out everything. I kind of use a combination of the pencil and the mono eraser to get the full picture, and then I work from there, building it up. Because once you add in the highlights, it becomes a lot easier to see what you're what you're actually doing. And even this doesn't have to be perfect or make any sense or look in any way, shape or form realistic. These are just the start of your rough guides, basically. And the side I've done a bit more already. And I'm just changing up the direction every other stroke, just to not have it look like this, because this is still not the same as this. We're not the same layer or level of completion, so to speak. So obviously gonna be different. And here we are starting to get into the kind of parts where we will be fading out our details. Now take an F pencil. Wait. Gonna just scoot you forward and then drop you down. There we go. Stops me from bumping into the tripod. And we just, as we did with every other part of the drawing, you're just slowly building up your shapes of your fur, direction of the fur, the values, all those little nuances that make up this area. Just taking a brush, not got anything on it. Just going over this general area first, around the tag. And if you've got any harsh edges, just use your blending stump just to blend those out. There you go. Back in with the mono eraser. So we back to the rinse and repeat methods. And with every layer you get more precise. You take more care in your application, where you put everything. And then I just gonna keep the brush close. Go. And as you can see, the more, even with like 2 layers of the pencil and the mono eraser, it already looks more complete. And it's starting to show what it's actually supposed to be. So it doesn't take a lot, it just knows what combination of stuff you need to use. Brush. Now I'm going to go up to a 3B. It's still sharp. And rinse and repeat. You're gonna slightly add some stuff underneath this little ridge, but it's not really gonna play much of a part because this is very much on the edge of the drawing. And then in this little shadow, it's the darkest point is here at the top, and then the fur that comes out of that is in a downward direction, and that just kind of emphasizes that these little fur are tucked underneath the link because it goes in a different direction. And you can easily kind of, if you do any practice sketches, use just direction of marks to indicate shapes and stuff, especially with fur. And you will notice that even that simple kind of method of cluster of maybe direction will show even show depth and some form of three-dimensional aspect to it, even though it's not truly worked through. It's just about being smart with your applications. Just taking a brush, giving that a little sweep through. Back in with my mono eraser. This is my F pencil. And now I'm just going to go in, this is not a very highlighted part of the fur, so I'm just going to go in and mute everything out. Right, so I'm gonna now take my HB pencil in this area over here. Scooch you a bit closer, there we go. And we're just gonna continue on building up the value. And also establishing kind of the shapes around this area. And as I get down to the edge, I'll kind of use less pressure and just kind of taper it off, not really care so much about the details down here at the bottom of kind of the edge of the drawing. And in this area, I'm just focusing on obviously the darkest parts and taking notes of the direction, because here it kind of changes, it goes down and then it swoops out. Okay, so now I'm going to switch it up to an F pencil. Oi, wrong hole for my sharpener. So I broke the pencil lid. There we go. So for this, I'm just going to go into kind of the highlighted bits and fill it in. And then probably do a blend, erase, go back in with my darker B pencils. And you're also going to kind of use this F pencil to kind of fill in those gaps from the 8B pencil and just even out its application. So it's gonna look messy in the beginning, just as it should resemble kind of what these areas looked like in the beginning as well. So in this area, the F pencil, if you've got the same depth as me, it won't really pick up as much, won't really do as much. Okay, so now I'm going to take a brush with some powder on it, and I'm going to go over the this entire bottom section. I'm going to go right up to the edge as well. I'm going to avoid the collar and the metal links, but since the tag is still not really, nothing has been done to it, I'll just sweep over it as well. So this should just give an even look and blend out some of those pencil marks that you've made. Now I'm just going to take my kneaded eraser and clean up ever so slightly. There we go. It's still not, obviously the edge is still something that needs to be faffed with, but once we get the details just right in this area, we can kind of actually only then really work on the edge. So now I'm going to take my mono eraser So I'm going to use my mono eraser to go to the edge, as it's taking away instead of adding. So that will just add to, once I go in and soften it, it will still have that little bit of difference. That you'd want. Okay, and then this part I'm just going to need a bit of a larger mono eraser. So I'm just going to switch it up. And as we did the first time around, you just switch up, you vary it a little bit, add a bit of a different direction every now and again. And I'm just going to take my big brush and go over top. So back in, I'm going to take my 3B pencil and just rinse and repeat. Right, just cut you out a little bit. Sometimes nice to just see what it all looks like as a whole. Okey-dokes. Now I'm just gonna take my kneaded eraser and just start cleaning up around the edge. I'm gonna keep my mono eraser close for stubborn areas, which you will find sometimes, and also if you've got some grid lines that are still present. I'm just also going to use the kneaded eraser to pick up the mono eraser's little scraps. And I'm just taking little circular motions around the edge, and just every now and again just fold it over. And this as well, it's going to take a little bit of finessing in certain areas sometimes. Especially if you want that softer look. And then just taking my brush, and you'll kind of switch up between the two as you go along. Back in with my kneaded eraser. And just use your brush to kind of get rid of harsh lines, if you get any that were made by the eraser. You can even use a blending stump if it doesn't really blend out with the brush, which does sometimes happen. So you also just want to constantly, that's why I zoomed out, check it so that there's no like strange bumps, or one side is maybe more pointy than the other, or it kind of comes down to a triangle point, that you've just got a nice smooth edge. And that does also just take a little bit of time. Right. So I'm kind of at that point where I'll do some more faffing with the shoulder around the collar. The tag, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with the tag. But I'm going to write the name of the animal on the tag. I don't think I'm going to film that at all. So after I've done the tag, I might just come back and explain how I did it, because I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it just yet. And then I'll just add some final highlights in the nose, maybe do some bit of work in the nose. But other than that, I'm quite happy with the way it looks. Once I'm done with the tag, I'll probably do some other extra little details if I do find something, which I'll also come back and just say if I maybe did do something. But the animal, the dog at this point is at a kind of a level of doneness that I would say you would be very happy with. You are more than welcome to keep faffing with the drawing by all means, because everything that I'm going to do is stuff that I've already explained. So that combinations of pencils that I used for other areas in the middle end, it's very much the same across the board for everything. So yeah, I would call this done. I would be very happy with this. Maybe in a day or two, I always sometimes leave it for a day or two just to check whether I am still happy with the end result, and then I will continue on, maybe add a final detail here or there, or maybe see that a highlight still needs to be a bit more highlighty. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put my pencil down for you guys. It's already been, I don't know how many hours it's already been, but I'm very pleased with the way it went. I just want to finalize all the details kind of in my own time. In my own time, and also try and figure out what to do with the collar, the tag of the collar, and then I'll come back and explain everything and just give some final notes and final little, yeah, I'll probably do that, I don't know if I'll do this in this video, maybe in the time lapse just give like a quick little explain, or maybe not, I don't know. If I do decide, you'll see me in just like a couple of seconds to explain the final thing. But yeah, so I am very pleased with how the drawing went. We'll probably for the next few videos do some more focus things, focus on specific textures, types of fur, types of materials, which I think would be good, because it's always sometimes nice to focus on the details and then put it all together in a large drawing. So yeah, I think that is what I'm going to do. So if I'm going to come back, I'll see you in a second. Right, so I am back after faffing with it for a little bit. I didn't change much at the top here. As you can see, there is a tag in. I want to see it with fresh eyes. As you can see, there's still some spots that need some further developing. Well, not developing, but just that final little details. I did darken up underneath here on the shoulder, and then obviously cleaned up everything around, but yeah, I'm gonna leave it for a few days. But as I said before, I'm very happy with the way it came out. It looks balanced, it's not flat, it's got its highlights and its dark points. Yes, so I'm very pleased with it. And when I darken up here, I obviously use the 8B and then the 3B to blend it out into the lighter bits. The tag, I generally just use an F pencil blending stump and my mono eraser, and then for the name, I'll probably play around with that more. I think the darkest I used was the 3B. Very lightly soft pressure for it mostly, but that's something that I will build up as well, just to get it more depth, because at the moment I can still see a bit of the paper texture coming through. So yeah, very happy with the way it turned out. I hope you did enjoy it. You are more than welcome to keep on faffing with it. Put your own spin on it, see if you can maybe certain areas that you feel needs a bit more work. Then yeah, absolutely go back and rework it or spend a little more time on it. Most of, as I've already mentioned, my techniques are very rinse and repeat, just a different combination of pencils. But yeah, I hope you did enjoy it. And I will see you for the next one. Cheers.